morning, and welcome to Connections Radio Show, where we talk about ideas that matter. I'm glad you've made the connection and are with us today. I'm Lori Fitz, your host, and the goal of our show is to explore a wide range of topics that challenge us to see ourselves, our community, and the world around us in ways that get us thinking, get us connected, and perhaps inspired or challenged to do just a bit more because we've made that connection. Our topic today is Finding Elijah, a story play on finding peace, justice, and hope. Our producer for the show and leading our show conversation today with me is Rick Bernardo. Thank you, Rick, for going out in the field and doing interviews about this story dance theater production.
You're welcome. It was fun.
I'm glad. I'm glad we're kind of breaking some of our older traditions of just always making people come here. And now you're going out there.
Well, this is where our studio is, so it's normally easier to hear them
Yes,
on these microphones
yes.
if they're in the room. And it's evolved into, we use StreamYard for video conference kind of broadcasts. This was different in the sense that I went to the Phoenix Theater where they were doing rehearsals, and with some new little tech equipment,
Wh-
I was able to record them on site.
Oh, that's terrific. That's terrific.
And yeah, and basically that was a delight in the sense of it was easier to find them and have them interviewed. The other side of that coin is there's always going to be tech issues you don't know you have until you have them.
Sure.
So
Sure.
that part is a pain, but it's working through that and getting it ironed out with a good electrical iron.
Well, good. I think you had some steam with it too. It looks like all of the wrinkles are out.
Yeah. Not from my face, but but from the process.
Detail.
Exactly.
Well, we were approached about looking into the Story Dance Theater. Story Dance Theater's mission is to entertain, educate, and inspire through enacted story and dance. This was founded by Sia Sauter in 2012. And it's basically combining acting and storytelling and dance to retell old tales in a relevant way. Sia does a lot of the rewriting. It's mainly Jewish tales for a modern audience to help them think through the moral and the meaning of the story. So a lot of creation taking place, a lot of dance, singing, vocal refrain. It's all good. It has opportunities of doing that for events and classes and all sorts of cool stuff. So you worked with Sia.
I worked with Sia and also a partner in this process, Brandon Schorsch from Jewish Community Action. And we'll hear a little more about him, but he partnered for some aspects of this production, not in it directly, but as to promote it, and help with the workshop.
Tell me a little bit more about Sia.
Sia founded Story Dance Theater, which you told us a little about. The mission is to entertain, educate, and inspire through story and dance that she enacts herself. She's one of these people we love to have on our program who's a polymath in the sense that she's got a doctorate in theater, but also religious studies and not only acts but dances, and is wonderful with music and how to work with that sort of sound design.
But it's also really grounded in social justice, as I understand you.
Yeah, well, this production in particular, Finding Elijah is known in Judaism as a prophet. Well, you know what? All the prophets in Judaism and Christianity stand for justice, which is just about fairness. We'll loop back to that. But this production in particular doesn't have diatribes about it, but it circles and orbits around what is fair, what is just, what is compassionate, what is good for the exile. So we'll hear a little more about that, and we'll talk about that. The productions are that she does also she loves to rely on any aspects of nature and actual location to weave that into her story.
Cool.
Anyway, so we can hear some of that first part of my interview with Sia Sauter, Sautter. That's how you spell her last name, Sautter. And Sia is spelled CIA. So it's Sia Sautter. And we'll listen a little bit to my talk with Sia. So we are with Sia Sautter, and the production is Finding Elijah. And Sia, please tell us in general about this production.
Okay, well, the production started when I was at Storyfest and performing, and Howard Lieberman, another Jewish storyteller, was there. And we realized the pieces we had presented were complementary. So Howard suggested doing something together. And I realized some other stories I had would fit together with his work to really address some important issues both of us had put in our stories, which was dealing with not only marginalization as Jews, but some other issues that go with that, with the community as well. And one of them was like, we've experienced hate. How is there hate in our community? How can our stories address that? But how do you do that artistically? So that's how it developed, and I put everything together into a play format with dance and music and presented a grant to Metro Regional Arts Council, and they said, great, do it.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. And I love that you mentioned how to put this into art. There's an old quote from a representational painter who was asked once too often what his painting meant. And he said, damn it, if I could say it, I wouldn't paint it. Okay? But art has its own language for hitting parts of our hearts and our minds and our sense of justice and all of that.
Exactly, and that's the production addresses the affective, the heart, rather than dealing with presentation of a newspaper report in play form.
Gotcha. That was Sia Sautter at the Phoenix Theater as I sat with her.
I enjoyed hearing her process of thinking about how to take the hate that not only she feels, but feels is relevant right now, and how to get that into a rendition of a play.
Yeah, and I noticed there's several twists on the title, Finding Elijah. That's the main title of this theater production, story dance theater production. It's called a story play on finding peace, justice, and hope. But in other places, there was a little promotion saying a story play on combating hate. Two sides of the same coin, I guess. If you're doing one, you're doing the other if you're doing the heartfelt job.
I think we should also mention we're not promoting this play to have folks go see. They did 2 days in April 18th and 19th. We're sharing this because I know it's an ongoing journey as they're creating these pieces, and we'll continue to see this grow.
Yeah, and I don't know for sure, but I wouldn't be surprised if there's a reproduction of it at some point. At some point, she mentioned that Metro Regional Arts MRAC, what is it? Metro Regional Arts Council. I know it was a C for somebody. Center Council. They funded this, and she was probably only good for a couple of days. That was the 18th and 19th. On that weekend, the preceding Thursday was a workshop that Brandon Schorsch from Jewish Community Action. We'll hear a little bit more from him later on in the next segment. But anyway, that was some time ago, 17th and 16th and 7th and 18th and 19th. So it's history, but we want to reflect well on how we in the production cares about justice and fairness. And there's elements of exile and how the community responds to that throughout this production.
Well, we have another clip that talks a little bit about some of her trajectory in wanting to do this.
Yeah, and this one's just a little longer, but this is again with Sia Sautter, Sautter, and we'll listen to that. Now let's go back a bit. What because people maybe don't know your history, and
Uh-huh.
you are like, you know, you and I spent some time in Berkeley studying theology in different ways, different paths, but some details about, like, tell us about that. And there's dance, and there's theater production involved. So a little bit about that, so people.
Right. So I have a dance and theater background, more on the dance side. But I also have training in theology and religion. I ended up going to a PhD program through the Graduate Theological Union in conjunction with UC Berkeley.
Cool.
And the major focus was, well, technically religion and the arts, but underneath the broader umbrella of history of religions. So I was looking at religion and culture. And a lot of my study has looked at how we talk about our important, highest values through the arts. And of course, being a dancer and actor, I turned more towards theater and dance, somewhat music also to do that. So that was my first book, what came from that study, called The Miriam Tradition, looking at women's Sephardic dance traditions as a form of Torah teaching.
You mentioned a word, Sephardic?
Sephardic, so Jews that came from Spain.
Yeah, so that's a Sephardic tradition.
Mm-hmm. And I was interested in that because I had started studying flamenco, and there were these rumors about connections to Sephardic music traditions. And technically that's not possible, because Sephardic usually refers to after people left Spain. But Jews were so heavily involved in music in Spain, and the traditions they left didn't just go away when they left.
Yeah, is there like a dispersion or diaspora involved with that, or is that a wrong use of the term?
No, that was a form of diaspora. Jews and Muslims were forced to leave. Jews fully in 1492. They had about, was it 3 months to leave?
Oh.
3 months to leave. Obviously, not everyone could. There's some theory that they hid in the back hills of Andalusia, and then they gathered with the gypsies, and together they started to form this tradition that became flamenco. That's a little bit romantic.
Okay,
Yeah.
got it.
Yeah.
It's fascinating to me. I spent 20 years in Berkeley myself. I like to brag. I was only 5 years in my 3-year graduate program. Took a while.
Well, and it's a fantastic place where you are steeped in spirituality and different traditions from around the world, and then the music and the dancing and the arts that are involved in the religions are just there, and you can go and see them and participate in them.
I went there to study medical ethics, but I ended up touring doing music and comedy. So
well, it's what we did. I had 2 major methodologies, and for the religion and arts major methodology, they gathered all of us together.
Ooh.
So there were actors and musicians and dancers and painters. It's just so Berkeley. We're all exchanging together. We're all teaching one another. And I think a lot of my work is reflective of that period, where I learned to reach out to the community and say, how can we put something together, and what can you offer here, and how can I incorporate that into the work I'm doing?
There's so much of that going on in a lot of cities, but in my years in Berkeley, that's all I experienced, was a lot of that. Mm-hmm. Anyway, I identify with that. So before I forget, so one of my questions is, so Finding Elijah, there's flamenco in it.
Yes.
Tell me more about that, because the more I look at flamenco, and it's so powerful, number one, there's a guts and heart to it and all that, but also it reminds me of Islamic prayer, because the singing in the background sometimes is almost like the prayer from the rooftops or something.
As I told you, Jewish music tradition,
yeah,
it doesn't go away in Spain, but the music theory in Spain really gets set when Muslims are in Spain.
Oh.
So it generally understood that a man who came from Persia, I believe, named Zurab, set the music theory, which was modal. So you have that background in all Spanish music. What the Gypsies did with flamenco is really an amalgam of a lot of different traditions, but definitely you can hear some of the Islamic music in there. There's one form of a palo of flamenco that's sung for Semana Santa, Holy Week, which is called saetes. And you'll hear this in the street, and there's a lot of research indicating this is directly from the Piyutin tradition of Jews. So this is probably partially how I got attracted to flamenco. But when I heard flamenco music the first time, my dance came alive. My soul came alive in dancing. And the person I was working with at that time said, I know a teacher you should study with.
And you had been doing dancing already for a while.
Since I was a little girl.
What a great story.
She's full of stories, and she founded Story Dance Theater. This was about finding Elijah, which we had on a recent weekend at the Phoenix Theater, and that was Sia Sauter. Could please look up CIA Sauter, Sautter, about that, and we'll be back. Anything else you want to say before we go?
No, I'm looking forward to hearing more from Brandon, and that's coming up next segment. So,
all right.
Thanks for bringing this to us, Rick. This is fascinating.
There's more.
All right, I'm got my seat waiting.
And this is.
Morning. I'm Lori Fitz, your host, and welcome to Connections Radio Show, where we talk about ideas that matter. And I'm glad you've joined the conversation. Our topic today has been Finding Elijah, a story play and workshop on ending hate. And producing the show today is Rick Bernardo, who went out in the fields and collected some wonderful interviews.
I was in a field, and I also went to the Phoenix Theater, which was indoors.
And you've got Brandon coming up in this one.
Yeah, we interviewed Sia Sauter, the founder of Story Dance Theater, which produced this. But also she worked for elements of this production with Brandon Schorsch, SCHORSCH. And he's a lead organizer for Jewish Community Action's Combating Hate campaign, which dovetails in its concerns with this production. Jewish Community Action started this whole campaign to combat hate back in 2019. So Brandon's been one of the lead organizer and advocate, and he's done a lot of workshops around this topic. So he joined Sia Sauter to promote and support Story Dance's theater production, but also a preceding workshop on a Thursday that night about justice.
Cool.
And we'll just listen to some interview with Brandon Schorsch. And this is Rick Bernardo, and now we're talking with Brandon Schorsch from Jewish Community Action. What's your role there?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Rick. I am the Combating Hate organizer at Jewish Community Action.
Combating hate. That sounds like a worthy goal.
It sounds like a worthy goal. One thing I always say is my deepest apologies to all of the grant-making organizations. You know, we haven't solved it in the 2 or 4 year grant cycle, but we're doing our best.
Got it. Well, it's probably a lifelong mission for many generations, right?
You got it.
It's a worthy path. So what's the title? The Combating Hate Organizer?
The Combating Hate Organizer, yeah.
Not height, you know, it's not about tall.
No, we accept people of all statures.
Statures, exactly. And what brings you to, I know you're in full support of this production, and what's your role in Finding Elijah with Sia Sauter?
Yeah, so Sia invited Jewish Community Action to co-sponsor this event. We were thrilled when we heard that Sia had received the grants to make this happen. So Sia and I have worked together on a number of things these last few years while I've been the Combating Hate organizer at JCA. We've been in book clubs together. We've worked on a few presentations, I believe a presentation or two. The last 6 years have been kind of a rush of a lot of big things. But we were very excited to be part of this production. And Sia invited us to specifically be part of the workshop that's taking place on Thursday, April 16th, 7 p.m. And maybe the best way to put it, it's like in a little amuse-bouche for the production itself. It is not the production Finding Elijah, but it's meant to get us moving, and there will be a little bit of a presentation component from myself and my colleague Enzi Tanner from Bend the Arc, which is like a national organization that does very similar work to Jewish Community Action. And Enzi also was a former Jewish Community Action organizer as well. So the two of us will be doing a short presentation and thinking about hate broadly, really looking at the larger systemic perspective, really trying to get away from the interpersonal dynamics that we often are the first things that we think of when we think of hate. First, we think that interpersonal, because that's where we see it the most, right? We see it when somebody says something to somebody else, somebody posts something about somebody else, or God forbid does violence to somebody else. But oftentimes we're not looking at that bigger picture of where these systems produce these things, right? These don't come out of a vacuum.
Yeah.
Hurt people, and it's important for us to be thinking about how people have become hurt. There's the concept in Judaism of repairing a broken world. In many senses, this is Jewish Community Action's approach to how do we go and repair a broken world. We try looking at, well, how did it break in the first place? And then maybe that will give us a clue to how we can go and start fitting those pieces together.
Putting little chinks in the cycle is what I'm hearing. So there's a larger context for all of this happening. And there's also a personal embodiment as well as a collective embodiment going on. And it sounds like this workshop is addressing a little of both of those levels.
Yeah, it's a best of both worlds. In my 6 years of doing the combating hate work, my trainings are known for being a fire hose of information. A lot of information in 90 minutes, sometimes a little bit too much. And I'm really excited for being able to work with Sia on this, because a lot of times in my own work, I don't give others the chance to slow down, let alone myself. So being able to go and implement that into my work just with this presentation today, I'm really hoping that it leaves an impact on me for years to come, because I think that's something important.
Got it. And just for context for everybody, Finding Elijah is April 18th and April 19th. And probably when we hear this broadcast, it will have happened. But right before that, on Thursday evening, is a workshop that we were just talking about. It's sort of another way to weave in the themes about justice, embodiment, and peacemaking all together. What brings you to the work you're doing now with Jewish Community Action?
Well, I started working with Jewish Community Action, funny enough, January 6th of 2020. So my 1 year work anniversary was quite a doozy. But, I first got into this work because a childhood friend of mine started getting into some weird malicious stuff in the early 2010s. So this is before people started really getting radicalized quickly on the internet, with algorithmically delivered information, everything streaming all the time. It was a little bit more of a breadcrumb trail back then if somebody started getting into some severe extremist stuff. But after that happened, I really wanted to understand, well, what happened? We were, the best of friends in middle school. We lived very, very similar lives. And as I did more, I guess, independent research for my own sanity, I started finding that there's a whole ecosystem of people out there doing this work, looking at how to go and address this in a broad policy-making way, but also in an interpersonal way, to make sure that it's a lot harder to pull somebody out of the well. It's a lot easier to prevent somebody from falling in. So there's a lot of people out there doing the work to make sure folks don't fall in that well.
He's fascinating. One of the things that struck me that Brandon said, hurt people.
Yeah, hurting people. Yeah. It's an old saying I had heard before. Yeah, hurting people or hurt people.
Yeah. And that the whole view of a broken world and how does a broken world come together?
And those are threads that are woven through Story Dance Theater's Finding Elijah production. We've got one more little clip of Sia that will match to what we heard from Brandon Schorsch from Jewish Community Action, who helped with this production. Sia Sauter, again, founded Story Dance Theater. And here's a little bit more from her. Let's go back to the production.
Yes.
Has the word Elijah in it. And I want to hear a little more about why Elijah? And I know from my own studies a little bit about Elijah, but tell me more about why Elijah is important to Judaism or in the Torah or traditions.
We'll start with my production first.
Okay, yeah, let's do that.
Okay, and the story came about partially because I went to school at the University of Haifa on top of Mount Carmel, and the figure Elijah is associated with Mount Carmel because of specific stories in the Bible.
Got it.
And as part of the last piece that is entitled, that story, it was entitled Finding Elijah. But it's my experience being alone for the first time and, having my wonderful, lovely Israeli roommates would take off for long weekends and I would be by myself, and I learned how to meditate. And I just recalled the story of Elijah having to hide and being in that area and being very upset and hearing that still small voice inside calming him. And that was also a story my mother would always tell me because she tried to stress to me the importance of finding that voice inside myself. So that's why I wrote that story. But I had already written stories based on Jewish folktale versions of Elijah. And the Elijah in the folk tales and Jewish fairy tales is a little bit different. He's a little bit more magical. He's almost like Doctor Who, traveling to different times and spaces, helping people, rendering justice often.
Yeah.
So I would just pick some and start creating stories for performance out of that. And one was called The Magic Flower. And it just seemed like a lovely introduction. And for me, the tale was always reflective of exile from Spain. So I start the play there to introduce the idea of what happens when communities work together and when there's groups that are excluded or sent away because of hate or aren't included because of hate. But it's done gently.
Yeah, there are themes. I went to one rehearsal, and what shouted out to me was there is exile going on, and there's a community response to how do we deal with exile.
Yes.
As well, and all done very artistically. And I did not know that there's some vignettes within the production that reflect parts of your life. It's kind of woven in. I mean, I don't know which parts would be literal, which parts are, but that all rings a bell. So thank you.
Yeah, well, I do that because the master playwriter, in my opinion, is Shakespeare, because he borrowed stories from different world traditions. And the more I studied Shakespeare, the more I realized that's exactly what he was doing. And just so advanced for his time. But then I'm like, how can I do that? I'm not being paid to be a playwright all day, but I like that idea. And how can we do that to deal with the issues of our day, just like Shakespeare did in his time? He couldn't talk about religion literally on stage, but he seemed to hide it within the text.
I love her voice, and I love that she's in search of finding our voice, that story about her mom encouraging her to find her voice.
And
it's so important.
C.S. Sauter, founder of Story Dance Theater, she expresses her voice in all kinds of media, dance, animation, theater. Theater isn't not only just people on the stage, but it's how they're positioned on the stage. So it's all that's fascinating.
I also like Doctor Who as Elijah. That's just like, wow.
There's a mythic aspect of Elijah showing up, in different guises at different places in Judaism.
So tell us what we can expect in the next segment.
Next segment, we're going to hear another couple of interviews with C.S. Sauter and Brandon Schorsch about Finding Elijah, a story dance theater production on combating hate, but also creating peace and justice.
I'm looking forward to it. And we'll be right back after a few short commercials and announcements. Good morning and welcome back to Connections Radio Show, where we talk about ideas that matter. I'm Lori Fitz, your host, and I am so glad that you've joined this conversation. Our topic today is Finding Elijah, a story play on finding peace, justice, and hope. And our producer for this show, Rick Bernardo, went out, saw some rehearsals, interviewed great people, and is bringing that all to us on our show today. Thank you, Rick.
Through the miracle of technology, we're bringing it. Yeah.
That's great. I love it. So tell me what this segment will be all about.
This next segment is with Brandon Schorsch, lead organizer for Jewish Community Action's Combating Hate campaign. And we heard from him earlier, and he helped not only promote, but also did a workshop. And their Combating Hate program is central to justice and peace in the world. And that's also central to the Finding Elijah production that we're orbiting around today. So we can listen to a little more of my conversation with Brandon Schorsch. In your work with Jewish Community Action, it makes total sense that that organization is supporting Finding Elijah production. But what else are you involved in?
Yeah, so Jewish Community Action, our combating hate work looks like giving presentations as these 90-minute long, sometimes shorter, presentations about the best to say the state of hate, in the United States specifically, because that's where we organize Jewish Community Action. We organize in Minnesota, organizing Minnesota's Jewish community in solidarity with communities across Minnesota.
Okay.
And the other part of our work looks like our Combating Hate Coalition work. For the last 6 years, we've been part of the Communities Combating Hate Coalition. Our website is stophatemn.org. And we have been able to get roughly 24 organizations together, some that you wouldn't necessarily see them in the same coalition space together. Sometimes the news would make you think that these organizations are fighting like cats and dogs. But we know that's not the case, and we have folks sit down and we work together on common goals. In 2019, when they first started conversations for this coalition, just before I started, we looked at, there's some odd loopholes, unintentional ones in Minnesota state law at the time, where it could be interpreted that if a hate, or as they're known in Minnesota law, bias crime was done against a piece of property, but the person who owned the piece of property was not part of the targeted group, then it didn't necessarily count. So we sat down with other organizations. We said, we got to clarify that, because obviously that wasn't the intent of the law. But if people who are responding on the scene might think that, we want to make sure that they've got clarity. And the other thing that we really worked on was improving the hate and bias reporting mechanisms in Minnesota. A lot of times we hear about hate crimes. Well, crimes are violations of criminal statutes, but we also have civil laws. So if something is a civil rights violation, maybe in the workplace, it's not a criminal violation. And we worked on ways to go and make it so our lawmakers and our policymakers and the public have a better idea of how often those civil violations are happening. So then we have a better idea of the scope of the issue. And then once we have a better idea of the scope, we can better address the issue in a more surgical way.
Wow. So starting with good and accurate information about the scope and depth of the problem is vital for so many things. And it's a challenge these days for people to get doses of accurate information.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's called the Combating Hate Coalition.
Yep. The Communities Combating Hate Coalition.
And say the website one more time.
stophatemn.org.
.org. All right. Thanks. So there's work you're doing with that, and you're doing the workshop right preceding the 18th and 19th of April production of Finding Elijah. Tell me something about your past that sparked or sort of lit a good fire about standing up for justice and standing up for other people.
I'll tell you that, so I live a block and a half away from where Alex Preddy was murdered. And I've lived within 2 blocks of that intersection for 10 years. Since the moment I moved to Minnesota, I've lived right there at that intersection.
Got it.
And I love my neighborhood more than anything in the world. And for years, I have tried to describe to people the absolute beauty that I see every single day of how people in my neighborhood help each other. Every walk of life, every income strata that lives in the neighborhood, helping each other out every day. And my daughter was recently born, and I was on parental leave when Metro Surge was hitting. And what I heard out there every single day were these whistles out there. And there's something about it that's incredible, because it knew that you weren't alone, right? There's something terrifying about what was happening in our neighborhood, but every time there was a whistle, it was like a flare shot up into the sky, that you knew that there was somebody out there who cared for their neighbor.
Yeah.
You weren't sitting behind a screen thinking, what's going on, right? You heard it out there.
You're out there on the
And
street.
if you could make it, you made it. And if you couldn't, you fired the flare too. You blew that whistle. I couldn't necessarily go out there with
Yeah, gotcha.
a 4-month-old knowing that these guys might go and use chemical irritants on children, as they did on camera multiple times.
Yeah.
But what I could do was blow that whistle for someone else to hear that whistle and pass that torch. And that spirit is something that I've seen in my neighborhood for 10 years. And I know it long preceded that. And I know it's going to go on for decades to come. And that spirit exists everywhere. And that's the type of thing and the outlook on life that draws me to not just the combating hate work, but to productions like Sia's that really ground us in those innate human qualities that bind us together. That idea that we are all made in that same image, and that we all share that same divine spark.
Well, contrary to what is passing for power, political power, which is often about controlling people, all right, this is a life-giving kind of energy that's a true human power, common to all spiritual traditions. What is inspiring is what is life-giving, what gives us breath and spirit. And this is the kind of work that I'm just hearing from both Brandon Schorsch and Sia Sauter. And it's just really, it can't be emphasized enough as the vital energy we want to focus on.
I loved how you captured with Brandon how important it is to first recognize the state of hate and how would you interpret that. And I knew about the bias crime and how that's been misinterpreted. But I loved the idea of how he saw the connection in the community through whistles.
Yeah.
And how to enlarge ourselves and be part of community through sound.
People's lives, like Sia's and Brandon's, both reflect a lot of what's in this Finding Elijah production. We have another brief clip with Sia about Finding Elijah Story Dance Theater's production, and then we'll come back.
Great.
So we are with Sia Sauter, and the production is Finding Elijah. Could you say something about, there's musicians involved in this?
So we have 4 musicians.
4 musicians.
Yes, we have a flamenco guitarist, David Greenberg. Ross Felrath is doing flamenco singing. Tali Levine will be singing, and she's wonderful voice. She's interesting as she grew up in Argentina, and she will be doing a Ladino song, and she's working some with the flamenco guys too. And she has a whole range of Jewish music she's presenting in the show. And then Jesse Simon is a percussionist who joined us. He is a fellow Shir Tikva synagogue member.
Okay.
And he was very excited about the possibility of joining us. And I thought, great. And if you want to work with Near Eastern drumming, that's perfect for the production.
Oh, cool. Thank you.
I'll say too, is originally the music design was presented by Zipporah Johnson. She was going to be part of this production, but she had to bow out. But the basic structure of what we should do was really arranged by Zipporah.
So thank you. Anything else you want to say about, there's definitely a confluence of Islam and Jewish traditions going on back and forth. It's very generously woven in this production. And that's so cool.
Yeah, I would have liked to have more funding, so I could have included Arabic musicians to have a little bit more authenticity, but we do try and work in some of that particular cultural tradition. I can't say it's Islamic, but I try and respect the cultures that the Elijah tales come from, which includes Christian and Muslim and Jewish cultures.
Well, those traditions are acknowledged in a good way, and that's sometimes the best we can do, or rather than trying to speak for them, but they're at least acknowledged and reflected for traditions to be humanized and
Mhm.
keep humanized. Anything else you want to say about the production, Finding Elijah?
Well, it's, it sounds so serious, but we work in humor and warmth. And I think people will walk away feeling reflective and also feeling good and maybe a little bit more open to talking with their neighbors.
And isn't that a nice reflection also with Brandon saying how important his neighbors are? And that-
Yeah.
A nice way of tying that together.
Talk about connections and Connections Radio.
And throughout it, it's all about honoring, right? Honoring our neighbors by caring and protecting them and fighting hate, but also celebrating who we are
Yeah,
and
and
finding joy.
there's a couple of crucial opening scenes in the production, Finding Elijah, where central character all of a sudden finds themselves at once abandoned, but placed in another place in exile in another location. And the communities respond to that knowing this person needs support. And that's all throughout this Story Dance Theater production.
Wonderful hearing right from the folks that are creating it. And we'll be coming back for our last segment, a quick wrap up and a little bit more detail about just how this production has made an impact on you as well, Rick.
Yeah, it was called Finding Elijah, and we'll be back.
All right. Welcome back to Connections Radio Show. We've been having a wonderful time talking about Finding Elijah, a story play and workshop on ending hate. I'm Lori Fitz, your host, and with me today is Rick Bernardo, who produced this program and has been guiding us through his interviews that he did when he went out and saw rehearsals and engaged the creators.
Yeah, and I spoke with Sia Sauter, Sautter. Look her up. She founded Story Dance Theater, and I interviewed Brandon Schorsch from Jewish Community Action. In the last segment, we heard of interviews. Sia mentioned some of the crew and musicians. We did not mention yet Ari Hauptman, who's a well-known actor and storyteller in the Twin Cities. He's famous in my world for showing up in a very brief couple of scenes in the Coen brothers movie, A Serious Man.
Sure.
And I just, he's my hero ever since then.
That's great. So you've enjoyed doing this production this way and being able to go out and bring what you've learned back in?
Yeah, it was a great way to meet people where they are in a number of ways. And also, this production, let me underscore, it's about justice and peace. Justice is a foundational basic aspect of any morality or any kind of ethics. And so it's about fairness. And since we're little boys and girls, we know what's fair and what's not, and we get really adamant about it, and we should.
Well, we only have about a minute left, and I'd love to have you share some websites for folks to know.
Yeah, sure. Sia Sauter's website is kind of long, but you want to look for Story Dance Theater's website on the web. All right, Story Dance is one word, theater, Theatre. Brandon Schorsch is from Jewish Community Action. That's just jewishcommunityaction.org. All right. Phoenix Theater is Phoenix Theater mpls.org, where this was located. There's all kinds of productions always going on there, and they have an arts nest where they foster other productions with all kinds of other organizations.
Well, thank you for bringing this, Connections Radio Show. We've been doing a series on Jewish voices, which we love, and we always love having arts and musicians and theater and authors. So I appreciate you bringing it to life for us with your interviews and with your rich overview. So thank you.
I tried to stay alive.
Yes, that was a good thing. And we're glad you're still here. And thank you, audience, for joining us on our journey through Finding Elijah.